The draft is tomorrow, and there's still a few questions that remain as far as what the Panthers will do at 8. I'll ask someone about that right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because on Fridays throughout the offseason, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions, except for this Friday is the draft. So we'll not be answering mailbag questions, but next week, the weekly Friday mailbag is back. What you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. The 2025 NFL Draft is tomorrow in Green Bay. Night 1, round 1. The Panthers will be on the clock at 8th overall unless they move up. They move back, but right now they are expected to draft at 8th overall, and we'll see who they select. And there are still a few questions lingering among that and the player that's been favored to Carolina. Is there a little bit of truth telling that needs to be said there as far as Jalon Walker goes? Mike Kaye, the Charlotte Observer, he's joining the show today, and we'll talk all about what to expect with the Panthers 2025 draft here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, as promised, Mike Kaye of the Charlotte Observer. Follow him over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Mike_E_KAYE. And subscribe, of course, to your local paper, as he does a wonderful job covering your Carolina Panthers. Mike, the draft is finally here tomorrow. How are you doing? And are you happy that we have finally made it to almost draft day?
Yes and no. One, I think, this takes too long of a process now. But also, I'm not a huge fan of the 3-day format. So, I mean, look, really? I think, in one sense, it's sorry, this is a long answer. This is when you, go for a stranger and you're like, hey, how are you? And you're like, well, I'm behind on my mortgage payments. But to answer you, it's kind of like a mixed bag. Because the next few days are going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be rewarding. So we'll see how that goes.
Absolutely. So would you prefer it to be just one day? Because it was Friday? It was Thursday night, and then all day Saturday or Friday, whatever it was before they changed. I believe it's been so long.
Oh man, it's been so long. I want to say it was Friday and then Saturday.
Yeah.
No. You know what? It was Saturday and Sunday because I remember distinctly watching the 7th round of the draft at the Outback Steakhouse in Jacksonville one year in college. That's okay. On a Sunday. Don't get me, people are already turned off by this, whatever this is that I'm wearing, but
I think you look great, and there's plenty of people who are listening, so they cannot see you in that lovely pink button-down shirt, which, you look great, Mike. You got a nice little red tan, as I know you've been out there at spring break. So, well, let's get into it. We've started, but let's get to what people actually want to hear about, which is your thoughts on the draft. And I guess they probably heard enough of my thoughts as well. Looking at it, Dan Morgan was asked multiple times by you, by Joe, and other people in different angles about potentially trading back. And if there would be that possibility. I look at this draft and I wonder, because of not really being a bunch of premier quarterbacks, if there's going to be an opportunity for Carolina. Do you see an opportunity for that to happen? Because of course it could happen. Is there a percentage you would put that they may want to trade, that to be able to trade back? And do you feel like they really have the appetite to want to do that?
Well, one, I do think they have the appetite to do that, but two, it's going to be difficult. I mean, when everybody's excited to jump backwards, not a lot of people are excited to jump forwards, right?
Yeah.
And so I think you have to find, for lack of a better term, a sucker. So you're going to have to go into this draft kind of thinking, look, I think they've done a really good job of being this is too on the nose to be the pick, right? With the whole Jalon Walker stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought, whether it was on purpose or not, outright calling him an outside linebacker adds value to Jalon Walker, the prospect, not just the pick itself. Because if you're saying, yeah, we view him as an edge rusher, well, then that fits top 10 value. And so that makes it more likely that you would select him. So if another team really badly wanted him, they better jump up the board. I also think, whether it was intended or not, to say stuck makes it implied that if you want a quarterback and you're behind the Saints, or you're the Saints and you think there's somebody behind you who wants to trade up, well, gee golly, I better trade up because, I need to get that quarterback. And with that said, if there are two quarterbacks taken in the top 7, one of those notable players is going to fall. And so I think that helps the Panthers, whether they trade back or not. Now, you said put a percentage. I'd put it at probably 20%. It's going to be very hard to move. The suckers in this grouping, I would say, are the Dallas Cowboys at 12.
Absolutely.
And the Miami Dolphins at 13. Here's why. One, the Cowboys are in search of another superstar player. It didn't work with Zeke. Miles Sanders is not a pure replacement for Rico Dowdle. I think they're going to be interested in Genty if he falls. I also think if Genty doesn't fall, they're going to want to take a look at one of the top tier offensive tackles. The same with the Dolphins. I think they pretty much have the same needs: running back, cornerback, and offensive tackle. And so if you're saying to yourself, there's a big drop off between cornerback 2 and cornerback 3 after Hunter, then you probably want to get up there. If you say if 2 tackles come off the board, you want to make sure you get the kid from Texas who's kind of considered the consensus number 3 offensive tackle.
Calvin Banks,
yes, excuse me. And so I think there is a logical jump there. And, we're recording this, but I think as the days approach, you'll kind of see teams start to kind of peck around and ask around. I was shocked when the Panthers traded up into the first round because that was not their priority going in. But I think a wide receiver run made it so that, when Xavier Worthy came off the board, you got to make sure you get one of the guys that are in this range. And so I think something similar can happen in that top 8 to 10 picks. The Dolphins strike me as very desperate. We've seen what's happened with Jalen Ramsey. We've seen what's happened with Tua. We've seen all this stuff. Chris Greer needs to do something. And so I think if you really like Shadur and you're staying quiet and you want to get ahead of New Orleans, or you really like Genty and he goes past the Raiders, or you really like Tyler Warren and he goes past the Jets, that's the team to me that I would circle and say, let's make a sucker out of them. And frankly, I would even take a trade chart loss to do it. Because to me, a 3rd round pick, or I'm just saying, hypothetically, a 1st round pick swap, a 2nd round pick swap, where you're getting a better 2nd round pick, and then a 3rd, and then maybe change with Donovan Ezeraku is better than drafting Jalon Walker just straight up at 8, in my opinion. Just from a value standpoint.
I mean, I'm not against that at all. I had Trevor Sikkema from PFF on recently, and I mean, he was extolling the virtue of Donovan Ezeraku, who, when we talk about production, we're looking at this edge rusher group. There's guys like Michael Williams who don't really have that high level production. Now, you go back and look at last season, took a cheap shot from Phil Maffa in that week 1 game, was injured half the season. So you wonder how right he was, but the games that mattered against NFL type prospects like a Kelvin Banks in Austin, he went off. And same thing with Jalon Walker. He didn't play against Kelvin Banks in the second time because Banks was out with an ankle injury in that game, in the SEC championship game. But Shamar Stewart, what did he do at A&M? If you want to talk about, you want to have a guy who's a high level producer at that edge rusher spot, I mean, it's Donovan Ezeraku, and he played at the P4 level. Say what you want about the ACC, but still, I mean, that's still a quality conference with some quality players, far more so than Mike Green playing in the Sun Belt at Marshall, where there's not going to be there's going to be Sun Belt guys that get drafted over the next couple of days, but there's not going to be nearly as many that are going to get drafted at the Sun Belt as at the ACC level. So sure. I wouldn't hate that at all. I mean, if I'm Carolina, that would make a lot of sense. I do think there's a lot of value too, as you mentioned, in getting another pick in the top 100, because right now it's 8, it's 57, it's 74, and like that's it. And I had heard, I think Daniel Jeremiah was talking about this is a starters draft, not a draft of stars. Like you want to get like 3. I mean, I feel like every draft is like this. You want to get like 3 to 4 starters. The best way to do that is by getting enough picks there in that top 100, getting as many bites of the apple. And in that scenario, kind of what I think would be appealing and allow them to do that. But it sounds like, again, like going to be kind of tough for that to happen unless Miami or Dallas are that desperate to get either a corner or, which is kind of crazy to me, a running back.
Well, here's what I would say too. Like, just talking about Ezraku and like comparing him to Shamar Stewart. So 3 years at Texas A&M, 4.5 sacks. Let's take away Donovan Ezraku's breakout 16.5 season. Well, in his first 3 years, he had 13.5 sacks. He reminds me of Cliff Averill, who was in Seattle with Dave Canales and Dan Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
To me, every time I watch him, I see Cliff Averill. He's got some Yannick Ngakoue kind of like traits. Speed off the edge. He ran a phenomenal 6.94 3-cone, which for those who don't understand what that means, if you run a sub 7.1 3-cone as an edge rusher, you're in elite territory. So he not only did that, he exceeded those expectations. Now, Shamar Stewart's got all these pretty numbers, but I would say if he's so athletically gifted and so good, why isn't he good? Right? Like, I mean, like that, but that, like, I get it. Like, trade hopping is fun, but if I were Dan Morgan in the year 2 of his GM ship, and I am coming off a 5-12 season where I was giving a lot of grace, I think I would be cool with being like, yeah, let another GM get fired. Like, that's a pick. Like,
didn't he say last week too at his press conference that like was somebody asked about production and he talked about that being important to them, or did I?
I don't know. They all kind of. I've talked to Dan. Like, I want to say a lot. I'm not complaining. Don't let Panthers PR see this. But all the conversations kind of glide together, right? And so, like I talked to him at the owners' meetings. We did a thing like post free agent. I mean, like there's been a lot going on, right? And so I think he's been really good about being direct but not like. Letting the panther out of the bag, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, so to me, like, I think they're pretty open. I don't think there's a guy. I'm kind of getting tired of the. I mean, you know me. Every time I come on the show, I complain about like stupid narratives. The pick might as well be Jalon Walker, but that doesn't mean that was like, hey, we came into the top 8 and that's our guy and that's the only one, because that's a really good way to have a plan blow up in your face. Anything can happen in that top 7. And so you have to come in knowing, like, if you can't trade back, there are 3 guys you really like in this range, right? And I think that's what they'll do. I think if Mason Graham falls, I mean, I know he's gotten some bad press lately, but off the field, he's supposedly a really good, hardworking kid. Mm-hmm. And the tape speaks for itself. Like, that dude is a disruptor. And pairing him with Derek Brown would be scary. So, I mean, if he fell, like, who's to say Abdul Carter doesn't fall to 5 and then, like, the Eagles trade up from 32 and it completely damages the entire, like, trajectory of the board. Like, there's stuff like that. Like, I think it's really easy to be very simplistic and say, this guy fits this. And I'm sure we'll have the conversation about Jalon Walker later in this podcast because it's time to be really, really honest about this.
Well, but let's be honest.
But I think, like, if you're them, you have to come. A smart front office makes mature decisions, right? And so that means, like, let's say Will Campbell miraculously fell to them, right? And no offensive tackles were taken. And New England surprises us all and takes, Tadaro
McMillan.
Yeah, right. Like, let's say stuff like that happens. The Jaguars are a true wild card. I think New England will take Will Campbell based on the discussions that I've had. I think with the Jaguars, it's probably going to be either an offensive tackle or it'll be Graham. I think they'll attack the trenches. You want to build from the inside out, similar to what the Panthers have done. I think at 6, it makes sense for an offensive tackle or Genty. So the Missouri offensive tackle,
Armand Membu.
He is kind of in play in that 5 to 6 range. And then if he doesn't get drafted there, I think the Jets are interested. I mean, Tyler Warren's another guy that I've heard connected to them quite a bit. And so you've got all these scenarios, like you've just got to play it off. Like I wouldn't go in being like, yeah, this is the guy we have to get. And that's not how they handled the Xavier Legette situation, despite how Xavier Legette was like, yeah, they wanted to draft me and stuff. Like that's, if you think like, if Xavier Worthy fell to that pick, if you think like it was like, you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm saying. Like there's this thing where it's like, yes, words matter and people say a lot of things, but like if you're handling this properly, especially from a positional value standpoint, it's all very interesting. But in that top 8, the quickest way to lose your job is to overthink or underthink. And underthinking is going, hey, we want this guy. It's fine to do that in the top 3. It's fine to do that in the top 5. It is not fine to do that in the top 8, especially in this draft class, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think what makes it interesting is there are so many kind of unknowns at this point in time. It feels like, I mean, obviously Cam Ward's going number 1 to Tennessee from all that we know right now. Looks like Travis Hunter's probably going 2. And then it should be, you would think, Abdul Carter 3 to the Giants, but that's still a mystery. So there's a lot of intrigue in this draft, which is going to make it interesting to see what the Panthers' options are there at 8. You mentioned Jalon Carter, and you said it's time to tell the truth about him. Or Jalon Walker, excuse me. What's that, Jalon Carter?
So many Jalen Georges, out there.
Same school. So, but when you talk about Jalon Walker, you mentioned it's time to tell the truth there. We'll do that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, Mike, you look at every mock draft. Everyone has been saying for over a month now that Jalon Walker is the pick for Carolina at 8th overall. Local kid, won the Butkus Award as the most outstanding linebacker in college football last year at Georgia. An outstanding player, versatile, could play off ball, could play edge. Dan Morgan said last week, as you mentioned, that they see him as an outside linebacker. And what might that mean for other teams out there if they heard that, as you had mentioned? But that's been the guy. And you said to me also that it's time to tell the truth about Jalon Walker. So please do tell the truth about Jalon Walker.
Let me preface it this way. Jalon Walker is an extremely good prospect, a very good prospect, close to a blue chipper. Problem is, I get the sense that he is more desirable to a front office, generally speaking, than a coaching staff. Because he's one of those guys that great character, great film, all this stuff. But once he gets here, you need to figure out how you're going to build your defense around him. Because if you take a guy in the top 8 and he is an off-the-ball player, naturally, but you project him as an edge rusher, he had 6.5 sacks last year. You are trying to figure out the best way to utilize him. And you're not just going to utilize him one way. So you are creating packages around this kid. Let me give you a bit of a history lesson on Evero. He has never had a first-round defensive player as a defensive coordinator, and it's 3 years as a defensive coordinator. He has also never played a rookie on significant snaps unless there was like just an overflow of injuries. Like Nick Benito was a second-round pick when he was there. I think he played 35% of the defensive snaps and barely played in the first month of the season. Mm-hmm. He had a nickel corner there whose name escapes me. He played a lot more, but that was due to injury and kind of getting him in. DJ Johnson, it took like literally everyone getting injured. I think Iku Leota played more than him, and he was an undrafted. Excuse me. Shaw Smith-Wade, he got a shot like late in the season, like emergency fill-in duty, and then suddenly, like when Troy Hill was too old and Dane Jackson was screwing up and all this other stuff happened, then he got in. Trevin Wallace, it took Shaq Thompson getting injured for him to see major snaps. Like, you're then asking this guy who is coming off maybe the worst case scenario as a defensive coordinator, firing two of his longtime buddies, giving up the most points in NFL history, granted in a 17-game season, and giving up the most rushing yards since 1980 to a guy who doesn't have a natural position. Like drafting a tweener, whether you view him as a full-time edge rusher or not, is a massive risk with that number 8 pick. It is. That's a fact. Look at Isaiah Simmons. Now, I think it's more natural to go from, being an inside linebacker to an outside linebacker as opposed to being a safety that goes into inside linebacker. That's not like up for debate. I also think Jalon Walker is an exponentially better prospect than Isaiah Simmons was.
Okay.
But this team has preached length, and specifically Evero likes guys who are run stoppers first on the edge. So you're typically looking for long-limbed players who are big. Big people beat up little people. It's a very common philosophy in football. So you're telling me a 6'1" guy who's got below average arms, weighs 240. Like, to me, that gives me pause because, one, either it's going against the philosophical nature of what your defensive coordinator is doing, or you are going to bring this guy along slowly as, Jadeveon Clowney continues to play a ton of snaps, and that's not the point of this. Dave Canal straight up told me, he said when Jadeveon Clowney is part of a rotation, he's been a lot more successful. DJ Wonnum was not a very good run defender last year, no matter how they want to bill it. Like Patrick Jones, those 7 sacks were a few of those were pretty manufactured. Like, again, he's a run stopper. So like they have all of these, different flavors, but this isn't Ben and Jerry's. You need a guy, if you're taking him at number 8, to be a full-time, surefire, hit the ground running type player. I think people have been a little too harsh on Xavier Legette. He was back in the first round, whatever. Didn't put up great numbers, but didn't put up like horrific numbers either.
Yeah.
But if you're selecting a guy in the top 10, he is like the guy. And I don't believe the Panthers would draft him thinking that he would fail, obviously. But if you're drafting a guy to be that, he's got to be on your board as your edge number 2, right? After Carter, if you're drafting him at 8.
Yeah, I would think so.
That's the thing here. I think that Jalon's a really good player. I just don't love the fit here outside of the outside media. Like, yeah, he's a scheme fit, but like philosophy wise, I don't know that he is that great of a fit. He might still be the pick. They might do it. Like maybe they've.
Do you think they will? Because you obviously you talk to them. You and Joe are probably the guys talk to them more than anybody else, and you would have a good understanding. And I tell people up here all the time, cool, you and I could go. It gets to be different if you do it, but there's people can go make a mock draft and whatever, and sure, that doesn't mean anything. But when you see Mel make one, or Daniel Jeremiah, or Matt Miller, Jordan Reed, that's usually source information that means something. So do you think he's going to be the pick, or do you think they have the same reservations that you may have?
I think he'll be one of those 3 options that we talked about. I don't know that he's the slam dunk guy. I don't know that they love anybody in particular outside of, the premium guys that everybody loves, right? Right. I do think there's a world where I could see it where they could develop Jalon Walker into being this great outside rusher. AC Carter has come very well recommended. I'm not hating on Jalen Carter whatsoever.
Jalen Walker, we're doing it again.
What?
Jalen Walker. Yeah, we're doing it again.
Oh, did I say Carter?
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Well, I'm not hating on him either. But Jalen Walker, I think he's one of those guys where I think if you put him in the wrong situation, you are not setting him up to succeed. And so that's my one concern here. It's not about him as a prospect. It's not about his talent. I think he's extremely talented. I just don't know that a team that is coming off this, I don't want to use the word stubborn, but I also don't know what other way to do it. This team is not, as much as Dave Canales is yeah, play the kids. Well, we haven't really seen that in action here by the defensive side, and they were still terrible, right?
Yeah,
Jordan Fuller was getting snapped. This team had one safety that was an NFL caliber starting player. in their depth chart. Now he's in Tennessee. Like, all these guys that were supposed to come in and be like, hey, I know the system. Well, if those guys can't do, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I'm not trying to be unfair to Evero. I think Evero is actually a very good coordinator, and he knows the scheme like the back of his hand. But so far, the evaluation of where guys fit, the way that the roster has been shaped over the previous 2 years with him as defensive coordinator, have not been in sync. Like, it's just not the thing. Like, they had some success that first year, but it was very clear the run defense was terrible. And so it's like, what's the solution here? Would you really want to take a guy who is a hybrid tweener player over a guy who is productive in college? You know, he can do all the, like we talk about as a Raku, like that, like that's the thing.
I haven't understood why he's not been like considered like a top 10 prospect. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I don't get it. I mean, he is a little undersized. Like, he's thinner. But he's got huge. He's got tree trunk arms.
Yeah.
And he's only 21. Like, everybody talks about like Mike Williams being 20. Well, Ezeraku's 21, man. Like, and then I see people that are like, take the corner from Texas. Well, he's 24 in December. So by the end of his 5th year option, he'll be 28.
Yeah, isn't Njade Barron more like a slot guy too?
Yeah. Well, and look, if you think he can play free safety, maybe that's the thing. But I just don't know how. That's not a premium position pick.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, unless they're like an all-world safety. And so I just think, like, there are a lot of options here, and I think the Panthers have played it right by kind of leaning into that of like, yeah, we're going to, you know, this stuff. He was asked about Jalon Walker. Dan Murray did not bring him up. So
no.
I think that needs to be acknowledged. Like, I know all the aggregators like, oh, man, he just, like, outright said he was an outside linebacker. Well, I mean, he was asked the question. And so I think, like, I think there's two ways of looking at it. If you want Jalon Walker as a fan, then you're like, wow, he just like tipped off that like this is the way you want to use him. This is the positional value that you'd want. If you don't like Jalon Walker, it's like, well, I mean, how's that going to work, right? Like, so like I think it's like whichever way you want to go. I don't think drafting Jalon Walker on the surface is, and I know I'm rambling like I always do, but like I don't think it's a bad pick. I just like. I'd want to see who's on the board. I'd also want to, know if they could have traded back. I think if they get the right opportunity, they will trade back.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that works out. You brought up two other positions that I do want to ask you about, but let's take one more quick pause and come back here with Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your pair of controllers, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribe services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Mike, I thought you brought up an interesting point about Jalon Walker, just about Jero Vero and how he's run his defense, not really asked a ton out of rookies unless there were just a bunch of injuries. Like we saw last year, brought up Shaw Smith-Wade, didn't come in until the injuries were moving on from Troy Hill, then the issues that they had with Dane Jackson, missed a lot of time, and Damani Richardson even came in late last season with the injuries that they had also at that safety spot. So has not really asked a ton, and Trevor Wallace as well. Has not really asked a ton out of rookies unless something like that happened. It feels like with the safety position, because by my count, there's still only 3 guys here on the roster right now, that being Javon Merrick, who they just brought in from the Raiders. You got Damani Richardson, and then Nick Scott's re-signed. feels like to me they're probably going to be playing a rookie safety a lot, and that's probably going to be a spot they're looking to take on day 2. I mean, that's going to happen, right? Like, we haven't heard a lot about the talk. I know you guys have asked about, would they potentially bring in someone like Julian Blackman, who I know you mentioned would be a good fit with Merrick. It seems to me that that's going to be kind of what they're looking to do, maybe even at 57, if there's not another pick that they have earlier than that.
Yeah, as far as I know, checking the internet a couple of different times, Blackman's still out there. I think that's probably more of a post-draft kind of move.
Sure.
Same with Marcus Williams. I think both those guys want to see what the market looks like post-draft, but I also think, like, you also want to have an understanding of your role, right? So, like, if they draft two safeties, like a second round and a fifth round guy, you want to know that you're going to get your playing time. And I think they have been very open. I wrote a huge opus off the owners' meetings where I talked to Dave and Dan about their new look defense. And I think they really want to be fluid with the way they use Merrick. So if Merrick's playing big nickel or if he's playing the dime linebacker, you need 2 really good safeties back there, right? So you really need 3 starting caliber safeties. And I think they'll give Damani Richardson an opportunity. But, like, I could see them double dipping in this draft. I did a mock draft that'll come out this week where I have them taking 2 safeties to start day 3, which I've heard this draft is pretty good at safety until about the 5th or 6th round, just people that I've talked to. So, and they're going to want a guy who can be a post safety. They're probably going to want 2 guys. And so I think they have put themselves in a position where they don't have to force anything, but yeah, they're going to have to add bodies. And I think from the safety standpoint, like, if you traded back, right, but you went past the suckers and you probably went into, like, the 20s, I think Nick Mware from South Carolina, they had a huge group at the pro day that I was at South Carolina. And, I mean, huge. I don't know that I've ever seen that much. I mean, I know sometimes we're prone to hyperbole, but I mean, like, they had Dan Morgan there, Cole Spencer, Jared Kirksey. So, like, the 3 biggest evaluators. Then they had, like, 4 other scouts, inside linebackers coach Pete Hansen, defensive line coach Todd Wash, Carter was, like, everybody was there, right? And so I think that's interesting, right? And
I mean, it makes sense. South Carolina's defensive line was outstanding last year. And then also, like, you have a first-round safety like Nick Mware, which I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of first-round talk during the season last year. But certainly once he, like, tested off the charts, and then you look at the fact that I believe he was a 3-year starter down there in Columbia. I mean, you watch the LSU game. Like, that guy was great in that game. I know there was a lot of talk about what Kyle Kennard did against Will Campbell in that game, because LSU hadn't given up a sack, and it was still almost like week 3 of the season, but still, like, Garrett Nussmeier hadn't been touched, and Kyle Kennard, like, went off in that game, and even Worry should have won it had there not been an unfortunate penalty call in South Carolina. But, like, it makes sense considering his needs on this roster: safety, defensive line. Well, yeah, South Carolina's got those guys.
And look, I think, as my nose is, like, bright red, as you've pointed out, they need more reindeer. Like, they need depth. Like, they need guys that can run, who are strong, who can tackle. Oh, I actually kind of like that reference. Even in my Easter best or whatever this is. I think, like, they're going to want guys who can move in space. It would not shock me if they drafted a nickel corner who can move in space, and maybe you use him as a free safety. But I would say, and I've said this before on your show, a large reason for their tackling woes was the safety position. And while Merrick is an incredible tackler for, as of late, they can't just do it with him, right? And so, excuse me, I think you're going to look for guys who are bigger, who are longer, who are physical, but also guys that can make plays on the ball. Like, that's a guy that I really like late is Billy Bowman, like, from Oklahoma. I think that I can make some plays. Jonas Sinker from Virginia makes a lot of sense. I don't think they have to spend a pick very high on safety because of the fit that they would probably want there. And, they are a very zone heavy team. They play a lot of cover 3. I think both those guys would fit in really well, especially with Merrick. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of options there.
Lastly, wide receiver, Dave Canales came out a couple weeks ago at the owners' meetings and talked about how they believe Xavier Legette can be that wide receiver one for them. I'm sure there's some skepticism out there of whether that will be the case down the road, but they're certainly going to give him a try. And like, it makes sense. You trade up to give him in the first round to get that fifth-year option. You love the guy. So why not at least give him the opportunity? And you return the top four from a year ago in Legette, in Thielen, in Coker, and in David Moore. Now, Thielen, Moore, probably not going to be on the roster next year when you look at things. I know they've talked about adding speed at receiver or just speed period across the board, but it would make sense speed at receiver. Do you see that being something that they're trying to target early on, or are they really not that pressed at all about trying to get that done in this draft?
I think they'll draft a wide receiver. I think like it's tough to draft a wide receiver in the first round after you've spent so much draft capital on one. But then again, you look at what everybody else is paying these top wide receivers, and it's like, here's my thing with McMillan. I think McMillan is an incredible jump ball wide receiver. I think he is more athletic than given credit for. That said, if I were a defensive coordinator, I would make sure that I stack the box still, because I know that once this guy catches a jump ball, I'm not going to have to worry about Yak. Yeah, I'm going to give up some explosive plays, but I'm not going to have to worry about him burning a corner.
Okay.
Matthew Golden's different from him in that I think he's a lot like Brandon Cooks. He is very smooth out of his routes. He can pretty much run every route. He ran a 4.2, 4.29. Like he's got legitimate speed. The reason why I like him for the Panthers is because this offense is so slow and plodding. And I think you need to help out. If they really want to run the ball as much as they do, they're going to need someone who can take a safety out of the box. Because otherwise, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm like, okay, cool, these corners can handle these wide receivers one-on-one. Yes, they'll lose some jump balls, but like realistically, you don't have to worry about Yak. And so I think like that's something they have to consider. A guy I really like on day 2 is Kyle Williams from Washington State. Put up like incredible numbers. I think he's a really good fit here. I think he would be a great compliment to Xavier Legette. I think a lot of people are crowning Jalon Walker as this surefire, or sorry, not Jalon Walker, Jalen Coker as this like surefire, he's going to have this huge role thing. I mean, I don't know if he's out of the woods yet. I mean, I think he still has to earn it a little bit. Remember, he's a guy that cut out of training camp, and that wasn't too long ago. And listen, there's a need to be better, right? Like they need to continue to push these guys. I think I could see them adding a wide receiver in the first two days. I mean, I think that's logical. I could see like a reverse of last year where they went offense, defense. What was it? Offense, defense, defense, right? Like, so I could see the inverse of that where it's kind of like defense, offense, offense, you know what I mean? Like I could see it more being like the reversal, because that's seemingly what they've done in free agency as well. So, sorry, my laptop keeps vibing like that. It always does for some reason. But look, I do think they have to get faster, man. Like there's like, it's just the 29th ranked offense. You can't just leave it alone. Right. And so absolutely. I think if you're going to draft a player, they have to be something different than what you already have. And that means bringing speed. I think that's what they'll target at running back too, as much as they love like the similar styles of Dowdle and Hubbard. I think you're looking for speed. That was the whole reason why they drafted Brooks. So that's, I think the need for speed on offense is extremely apparent. And if you're adding to that group, whether it's a tight end, running back, or wide receiver, that player better have some juice.
All right, let's see what happens. We'll find out tomorrow night. We'll finally get the answer what they're going to do there at 8, whether they stay put, go back, or go up potentially in the draft. And we'll find out, of course, what happens on day 2 and day 3. Check out all of his work over at the Charlotte Observer. Follow him over on X at Mike_E_KAYE. He's also over on Blue Sky as well at a different handle. Just search Mike Kaye. You'll find him. But Mike, appreciate your time as always, your insights, and it's finally here, so enjoy it, even if it is a plodding 3-day period, but enjoy it, because then it's like OTAs and waiting until football to actually show up again.
And vacation. which I badly need.
that you do. Appreciate it as always. Take one more quick pause, come back here, and I'll wrap up the show on Locked On Panthers. Thanks to Mike Kaye of the Charlotte Observer for joining the show today. A spicy Mike Kaye. Also, a Mike Kaye in need of clearly a vacation, as the NFL draft will be this week. And then Mike will get probably some time to take a deep breath, like a lot of us need, as it has been a long, arduous draft season. But it's been a fun one here on Locked On Panthers again. Like, I'm very thankful for all the folks who have joined the show over the last couple of weeks. Mike Kaye, Kyle Bailey on Monday. We talked to Isaiah Hull of Locked On Wolverines, Joe Person last week, Trevor Sikkema of PFF. Shout out to Zach Zako of Locked On Nittany Lions. Talked also to Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Oregon, Clint Shamble of Locked On Bulldogs, like everybody. Kyle Krabs, Bashai Hurt, Keith Sanchez, every single person who's come on the show. Very thankful for them and hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know this year I really wanted to dive into having as many guests on and as many different opinions, try to break down the draft. It's a lot to sit up here and to talk about on a daily basis for 30 minutes. So it's like I have only so much I can say, and I wanted to get some other people on the show. But tomorrow I will give you my final draft thoughts heading into, of course, night one of the draft on Thursday evening. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Goes by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Councils. I'm back next week answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. At me or DM me on Twitter or at me over on Blue Sky to get those questions in for next week's edition of the show. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Thursday to give you my final thoughts leading up to night one of the 2025 NFL Draft.